When I'm overwhelmed, my mind gets really cluttered and it feels like there's 50 different problems. So what I do is I back into it. I got to get it out of here. And that's the problem. It's hard to steer a parked car. So when you're in motion, that's when, in my experience, that's when God speaks to you and guides you. Versus if you're just sitting in idle, there's nothing really for him to say or do because you're not in activity. So I get out a blank piece of paper, no lines, because the lines to me are too restricting. And then I get out a pen and then I write down all the different problems that come to me. It's just like a mind dump on one side. And then once I get them all out, oftentimes it feels like 50, but it's 4. Just the process of it neutralizes it. You get it on paper. And then on the other side, what I do is I write, what is a potential solve for this thing? So again, it's some sort of activity. Is there an action step I can take on it? And 99% of the time is yes.
Hello, listeners and community. I'm just popping on here for a quick second to ask you for a favor and some support. If you are enjoying my episodes and my podcast, can you please go and like and comment and leave a review? And most importantly, download the episodes and download the podcast. As well, you can head over to YouTube for Entrepreneurial Elevation, and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel as I'm attempting to grow my podcast and grow my audience. That would mean the world to me. I appreciate all of you so much. Thank you for being here and for listening. My goal is to impact as many people's lives as I can by creating as much value as I can. So the bigger the audience, the better. And as well, I wanted to also hop on here quickly and offer you a freebie to support yourself. So if you go into the show notes, you can find a link and click there. And I've created a freebie called Laying the Foundation for a Financial Breakthrough with Your Mindset and Results. And it's a framework and a workbook that you can do to support you in getting clear right now on what are your values, what really matters to you, what are you internally inspired by, so that you can set goals for this coming year that align with your values. And then you can have a tool called the Definite Made Purpose Statement. It's taken from the book Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. And you can use this tool to speak your goals and your values and the things that you desire into existence with the belief that it is possible because you say so. And then a self-confidence formula to solidify that belief that you can have, do, and be anything that you desire. So check that out. I created that just for you. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of my community and listening to my podcast. Like I said, my goal is for you to get value. So thanks for listening. And without further ado, let's get to this episode. All right. Welcome, fellow entrepreneurs and goal getters, to Entrepreneurial Elevation, Unleashing Greatness Within, with my buddy, Steven Roddy, who I'm super excited to have on the podcast today. We used to roll in the same social circles and business circles years ago, and we've just reconnected for him to be on here. And I'm just so excited to talk to him. We used to call him, and he's known for being the connector. We were just talking about this, and it still rings true today. He's just so brilliant at connecting people to what they need, who they need, coming from his heart and doing things for the right reason. He's a very successful businessman, also very successful family man. He's got 2 beautiful kiddos, a beautiful wife, and he is the CEO and founder of Pageant Planet since 2009, which is the #1 pageant marketplace and community on the planet. He has a reach of more than 600,000 contestants, directors, industry experts. He's just phenomenal at what he does. He's also the co-founder of Roddy MedSpa and Modern Beauty Con, which he does with his wife, Renata. And I actually love this stat, and I want to ask you about this, but he was the youngest owner of a professional football team at the age of 23. And so we're going to be talking about a lot of things today, but it's going to be around the context of purpose and how to find and invest in your purpose and chase your purpose. So I want to say Roddy, because that's how I used to call you and talk to you about, but Steven.
Yes, call me Roddy.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for reaching out and thinking of me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful. And of course, because you're just somebody that when I think of entrepreneurship and business, you've been doing it since such a young age, and you just have a lot of wisdom that I know that you can share. And you're always just so humble. And so you know what, before we dive into purpose, I actually want to start with this fact, because when I was reading your bio, like, how in the heck did you end up owning a football team at the age of 23? Which one was it? And then how did your journey lead you to then founding Pageant Planet?
So, so I went to school actually to be a preacher. I don't know. Did you know that? I went to,
No.
but inside of seminary, I just felt more called to the world of business than I did running a church. And for some reason, my parents, to rewind, they asked me when I was 12, they asked me what I wanted to do for a living. What do you want to do for a living? And at the time, I had a fascination with the Chicago Bears. And I said, I want to own the Chicago Bears. And they said, do you mean to play for them? And I was like, no, I want to own them. Oh, okay. So in college, my friend knew this childhood dream, and he and I were in a wedding for another buddy in Florida. So basically, at the airport, he saw this Forbes magazine that said, own your own football team. And it talked about arena football team and how you could buy an arena football team if you had $5 million in assets. John Bon Jovi had a football team at the time. And so after reading the article, I just felt inspired, and I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to buy a football team. I was like, I'm just going to swing for the fence. And if I miss, I'm just going to laugh and say, can you even freaking believe I tried that? So basically, I went home and just did a Google search. At the time, I was working at the Cheesecake Factory.
Love it.
Yeah. So I found a guy who was selling the rights to an arena football team in Georgia. That's where I was living at the time. It was in Columbus, Georgia. And I called him up and was like, which, by the way, do you know, we say call them up like this? Kids nowadays, they say this, call it. So I called him up and was like, I want to talk to you about buying your football team. And he said, well, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, oh, should I like lie or tell the truth? Lie or tell the truth? But I was just like, I wait tables at the Cheesecake Factory. And the best, any server who thinks he can buy my football team, I guess I at least owe him lunch. And I'm like, I guess you do. So we met at the Cheesecake Fest. We're having lunch there, and my buddies were walking by, like, what are you doing? I'm like, stop. I'm trying to be professional. And so he basically was like, what do you think? Why do you think you can run the football team? What skills do you have? I'm like, as far as I could tell, in order to be a successful football team, you have to sell advertising. And if I can sell you, the owner of the football team, to have lunch with me, a server, at his own restaurant, I think I can get somebody to buy advertising at a football team. And so he was like, okay, good answer. So we basically talked how we were going to come up with the money, and I got him to finance the rights to it, but I wasn't sure how I was going to come up with the down payment. So I had this crazy idea. I didn't even know if it'd work, but I went to the bank and got a cash advance on my credit card for that amount of money. And then I went down, gave him that money. I got the team. I started selling advertising, and that's how I became the youngest person to own one.
Oh my Lord, this is the best story. All the things in hindsight that we know about that, I wonder if you even knew you were doing it, right? Like, dream big, just don't take no, just go for it. It's like swing for the fences. Like, you just had this big, hairy, audacious goal. And as a kid, we're just going after it. And I love it though, right? There's so many lessons in what you just shared. What do you think as we're talking? And I love it. Like, I work at the Cheesecake Factory, right? Just come here for, and like, in hindsight, you're probably like, you're laughing, right? It is
Yeah.
pretty.
I still get embarrassed. I'm like, and I was sleeping on a friend's couch because I didn't even have a place of my own at the time. And so I was couch surfing on top of all of that. So it was a ridiculous situation.
Oh my gosh, though. But for those people that are listening, like, what a great message of don't let your circumstances dictate what's possible for yourself. And you know what I mean? That's such a huge message right there. What would you say based on this? Because our topic is purpose today. What was driving you to go out and actually take all those risks and put yourself out there like that?
At the time, I had this mission, if you will, and I was like, I want to see what my limits are. Like, what can I really, because my background is, I believe in Christ, and I do my best to follow the ways. And I'm like, if God is on the inside of me, what am I really capable of? And so I was just in essence, like testing my own faith. And it started, there was smaller steps before I took that, but that was the crescendo of I'd been stretching myself with smaller examples before then. But then when I went after that, I was building that faith. So that was really the driving factor of what is my potential.
No, I love it. And how was that experience a sounding board or a springboard for what you're doing now? Because did it instill that belief in you that, hey, I am capable of doing, big things? Do I have unshakable faith and belief in myself? Like, how did that experience shape your businesses now?
It actually had the opposite. So with the football team, I overreached, and it was a rich man's playground. I clearly was not wealthy. And that was my first real business. I had a few other smaller business, but like when you're talking $1 million budget, 30 plus employees, there was just so many moving parts that I just didn't even know how to do any of it. I didn't know how to set a budget, let alone follow a budget, because they're two different skills. Um, I didn't know about people management. Everything I knew was just in books, like personal development books, which is just not real life. And there's a very big difference between what you read and what you experience. And what basically happened with the team, which is maybe a whole nother story off the context of this call, but basically the mob took the team from me and then threatened to kill me. So I left the city. But yeah,
Another episode, Roddy, another whole nother
yeah. So, but it was going down a path where it wouldn't have succeeded at the end of the year. I don't say it wouldn't have succeeded, but it lost a lot of money. I got a loan to bridge that gap. But in that process, I violated unintentionally the contract, which allowed some people to navigate around that. But that's where I got my life lesson, because what I discovered is that if you go to college for business, you don't really know anything about business words or what the definition of things that people who went to business, they still teach me. I'm like, oh, is that what you call that? But you don't know about the nuances. And if you really want to know about business, you just got to start doing business. And some people fall into really good opportunities, or they're positioned in a way that maybe they have appropriate mentors and they're able to analyze good businesses. And I didn't have that initially. So there was a big learning curve, and it definitely did shake my faith afterwards. So much so it was almost like PTSD, because I was so scared of losing money or like failing again. I was very scared, but I had to keep trying. And so it was just like this. My mother told me you're stubbornly patient and sometimes fearfully patient, but there's something in me that just keeps wanting to try. And so I had to try again. And I got into pageantry as the first girl that I was like, who's the prettiest girl I can get to do the coin toss? I hired Miss Georgia and I started dating. And then, so after the football team, I was looking for something to do online because it was inexpensive. And I saw that trend was going to be explosive. So I was like, oh, I saw how much money she was spending on coaches, dresses, pageantry fees and all that. I'm like, oh, if I create an online resource, maybe I can sell advertising and just bring the community together. And so that's what I set out to do.
Oh my gosh. You're obviously a visionary, because both of those things you just talked about, you were ahead of the curve. You're ahead of the trend, starting an online business. And we founded your business in 2009. That wasn't popular at the time. And I think that's super cool too. And if we're going to lean into your story when it comes to purpose, I'm curious, what does purpose mean to you? And then when did you start to discover yours?
So I was on a quest, and I remember being very disappointed. I read this book called The Purpose Driven Life by Rick Warren, and I for me, I didn't get anything out of it. I was like, I was looking for a formula that would help me identify what my purpose was because I was lost. And I think that in particular, talented people are more lost than non-talented. If you have 12 different gifts, a lot of different directions you can go, it's somewhat, you're just not sure. Whereas if you only have one skill, you're like, okay, it's clear I'm going to be a nurse, or okay, it's clear I'm going to be a construction worker. I'm good with my hands. It's the people that have options that sometimes they just stagnate. So after the football team, I didn't think that I was going to be any kind of successful. I just think, all right, being wealthy, being successful wasn't in the cards for me. So I decided to just reverse engineer it. And I did that by saying, okay, what's going to make me happy? If your purpose points to what is it that's ultimately going to make you happy with your life? What's going to make you fulfilled? So because I gave up, I said, all right, what do I want to wear to work clothing wise? Seems trivial, but do I want to be in my pajama pants all day, or do I want to wear a suit and tie? Do I want to wear scrubs? What in an ideal setting, what would I like to wear? How many hours a week do I want to work? What does my work schedule look like? Do I want to work 40, 50, 60, 0? Where do I want to work location wise? Do I want to work from a ski resort, coffee shops? Do I want to work out of an office, out of my home, beach? And then the last was like, how much money did I want to make? And so what I did is I answered those questions as honestly as I could. And what I came up with was like, what I came up with is if I am able to have a job or start a small business that meets those needs, then I think I'd be happy with the results. Because at the time, there was one person that I knew that liked what they did. What we're taught is, oh, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a construction worker. But you're not really thinking about the end result. And so you go and you spend the time in college and you're a lawyer. But then you're like, I hate my work schedule. Hate the people I work with. I like this element over here, but all the money isn't great. So they're not happy. And then so they went to school for this thing. They spent all this time, and now they need to pivot careers to find something else. Whereas if the person who thought they wanted to be a lawyer would spend more time thinking about the outcome of what they wanted in life, it doesn't matter if you're a lawyer, a teacher, or whatever, because if you're getting the desired fruits, if you have your dream work schedule, the dream paycheck, you're wearing to work, you're working location wise where you want to work, you're going to be like happy, right? So I spent more time focusing on the outcome versus what I actually wanted to do. And to me, that started to make all the difference in the world.
I love that, because I was going to ask what are 2 or 3 tips people can start to implement to discover their purpose. And you just laid it out, right? And thinking with the end in mind. And then to your point, you mentioned it earlier, and not in this language, I'm paraphrasing, but also to find your purpose is you got to be in the game. You got to be on the field. You can't just read a book and figure out, ta-da, I know what my purpose is, or you sit and ponder it. It's like you figure it out through doing, figure it out through action, you figure it out through trying different things with the end in mind still. And so I'm curious, because after your football scenario, and I think you and I were chatting a little bit, there's been a few other times where it's not like your journey to success has just been a straight line. And so what would you say to people who are, for example, they're in hardship or they've been through hardship and their focus is the hardship versus reframing those obstacles or adversities in a way as it's an opportunity to discover your purpose or have clarity about the direction that you want to go? What thumbs up? You gotta love technology. So what would you say to people about that if you can shift your mindset to look for opportunities, you will uncover your purpose that way as well, or if you believe that?
Yeah. I think once you're on the track, you're going to have hardships. Like, okay, life is going to suck sometimes. That's life. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're atheist, believe in God. It's just the byproduct of being in this world. But one of the things that I do when I start to get overwhelmed, right now, I've found myself getting more overwhelmed. I've got 2 kids under 2, 4 businesses, all 4 of them meeting needs. And there's an operational thing because they've all 4 like grown just simultaneously. And it's okay, I got to restructure this. And often what happens for me, Steven, right? Because we all have our individual skills, challenges, whatnot. But how I process, I'm an internal processor. So I even realize sometimes that I'm overwhelmed for a few days, but there's signs because of like outbursts. But then what happens when I'm overwhelmed, my mind gets really cluttered and it feels like there's 50 different problems. So what I do is I back into it. I got to get it out of here. And that's the problem. It's hard to steer a parked car. So when you're in motion, that's when, in my experience, that's when God speaks to you and guides you. Versus if you're just sitting in idle, there's nothing for him to say or do because you're not in activity. And so I get out a blank piece of paper, no lines, because the lines to me are too restricting. And then I get out a pen and then I write down all the different problems that come to me. It's just like a mind dump on one side. And then once I get them all out, and oftentimes it feels like 50, but it's 4. It's, just the process of it neutralizes it. You get it on paper. And then on the other side, what I do is I write like, what is a potential solve for this thing? So again, it's some sort of activity. Is there an action step I can take on it? And 99% of the time is yes. Maybe it's even if you have a life-threatening illness. Okay, an action steps could be like, can I do research to see, is there any food that could potentially help my symptoms? So some kind of activity that helps. And that right there will help you, just calm you down so you can stay focused on your purpose, because we're not a robot, right? Now, we start a journey, and you start a journey by saying, I think I am called to do this thing. I didn't think I was called to do pageantry, just checked out. Like, it wasn't even pageantry. It was online marketing. Like, I think by being an internet marketer, it would allow me to have the kind of lifestyle that I needed to make. And if I only made $30,000, $40,000 a year doing that, but I had the freedom, that I would have been like happy. Thankfully, I made more than that, but that's where it started. But as businesses grow and complexity changes, then your purpose somewhat evolves, because now you're in a leadership. You're doing your purpose of your business, but then what's my purpose as Steven? What am I actually good at? What brings me joy? So then it's almost, this is where personality tests are beneficial. So DISC and doing things like Enneagram and learning about yourself, because you learn, for me, in this process, I'm like, what am I really good at and what brings me energy up? Because that points to your purpose. God's not going to call you to do something and then you be miserable doing it. So either you're not in that space that you actually want to do, or you're in that space, but you've allowed yourself to do work that doesn't bring you energy up. Because once you're in your purpose, and you're in your purposeful business, your energy's up. And then when you're in your role, your purposeful role inside of that business, it's energy up. So for me, I recognize that there's 3 things I'm good at. I'm creative, I'm strategic, and I'm a good communicator. Anything outside of those 3 that I'm doing, it's basically energy down. So I need to be working topical on strategy, or coming up with ideas. And then I need to think strategically, how am I going to implement this? And then I need to communicate to people what needs to be done. And then I need to go on to the next thing. The reason why I'm in overwhelm right now is things grew outside of my infrastructure. And then I am more in the doing phase and not in the strategic planning, communicating, right? So, and then for me, it's, I've got to get back to that. And so write out, right, on the piece of paper, write out, here's all the different things that I'm doing that I shouldn't be doing. Is this a job? And if you don't have the money to pay for it, how do I either offload this to existing staff? Is there software that will help me leverage it? Do I need to be doing this at all? Like, maybe just delete it altogether. Maybe you don't even have to do it. So that's how I then start to back into those potential solutions.
Oh my gosh, I'm loving everything you're sharing because even as you're speaking, I'm thinking the power of designing your life and then looking for something that fits that versus choosing something and attempting to make the way you want your life to look fit. And
Yeah.
that's huge, just even right there. And I coach a lot of entrepreneurs. And one of the biggest things lately is people are just overworked and exhausted and in their entrepreneurial endeavors. And everything you just shared about when you design your life first and then you look for what fits with that and then within that, you look for your personality and how you can live your purpose at a higher level where it's energy up. That's where you can be more productive. That's when you actually free up more time. That's
Yeah.
when you have extra time for family and health and chilling on a Sunday because you want that to be your day off. And so there's so many moving pieces to this that you just shared that were really great. And I think it comes through time and experience too, being a business owner and entrepreneur.
I've been doing it for 23 years. I'm 43 now. So I've had various businesses for, 40 or 23 years. But the thing is that I want to get over to you is that your, these are my experiences. And what I would do in my journey is, oh, okay, in order to make it, I need to start a business online because that's what Steven said. But that's not what Steven's saying. What I want to get across to you is what I'm sharing is my journey and how it played out and is still playing out. But for you, it might look completely different. You might get an inheritance from someone. You might clean houses and then scale that up. You might be super satisfied by being a front desk at an office someplace, make a solid living and be like, and just love that. That's great. It doesn't have to be, I know you're listening to an entrepreneurial podcast, right? So there is some desire, but some of that desire could be manufactured by social media because you're disillusioned a lot by social media. So where it's everybody has a business, everybody lives in a multi-million-dollar home. When in fact, in America, the average household income is like $62,000. So if you're making 60 grand by yourself, you are better than most whole households in America. So, and just as a side note with social media, anytime I find myself comparing somebody's body, lifestyle, humor, influence on social, and I follow them, I unfollow them. You've got to remove the stimulus that makes you dissatisfied with your life. My son has no idea the kind of home that he lives in. He doesn't know if it's a mansion. He doesn't know if it's a one-place shack. He's clueless and he could care less because he has great time when mom and dad's around. The dog, same way. And kids are super happy. Dogs are super happy. And they're just zero comparison. They're just in the moment, enjoying where they are. And if you can do that's life, that's living. Friends that make also a lot of money. They're divorced, cheating on their spouse, need drugs. What my mentor told me, and this helped to relax me. So hopefully this helps relax you too. Because after the football team, it took me a while to get back up. I was 32 before my life. So it was about 8-9 year stretch when I was just broke. I mean, trying to figure it out. But I was committed to the entrepreneurial way and I wasn't going to go back to a particular job. That was my journey. It doesn't have to be your journey. I would to do it all over again. I have a nice job. I wouldn't have turned down that $60,000 job in oil and gas. I would have done that. And then I would have used it to aid my business journey, whatever. But a mentor told me this and it helped to calm me down. He said, from 0 to 30, you don't know what's going on. You're just trying to figure it out. You're making mistakes. You're tripping all over yourself. He said, your accumulation years are between 30 and 60. And you're accumulating wealth, contacts, wisdom, experiences. And then from 60 on, you're giving it back to the next generation, right? To help. You're giving away your wisdom, giving away your contacts, giving away your experiences and all that to just help them. That really calmed me down. I was like, okay, I'm just turning 30. So now I can just settle down a little bit. The other thing that he told me is, and this is going to go back to my friends being wealthy and their lives falling apart, it is if you chase money, you'll get money, but you won't like the other results that comes along with it. He was like, but if you chase your purpose, he said, it's been my experience, the money takes care of itself.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily take care of itself the way that you think. And it doesn't take care of itself on your timeline. So with my business, Pageant Planet, it's our least profitable business out of all the businesses, but it's been around the longest. But what Pageant Planet enabled me to do, because it's still my problem child, and I still have not figured that out. I've been able to create a following, but still the business model was flawed. So I'm still testing and trying these different business models. And so one of the things we're testing now is doing an event, because I'm a connector. It's just part of my purpose is to connect people. And boy, I have been marketing the brakes off that thing for 3 weeks, and we've sold like 15 tickets. Like, I have no idea how I'm going to get the 150 people there, but I'm committed to. And so I'm like, I've got to get a minimum 150. I have to. There's no going back, but I don't know how. But I'm also up against that. But I wanted to pull back that veil so you don't think it's all just like Humpty Dory. So right now, if we don't sell another ticket, I'll lose $175,000. That's a real number. Somebody's got to pay for that. So that's that business. And it's been the longest business, but that business has enabled me to start the other 3 companies that are all doing very well over here. But I thought that this business here was going to be the one. So the end result might not look like it. And even where you are now, it might not look like how you thought it was going to look. In my experience, it never does. But if you stay true to like where your purpose is and like where your strengths are, the money has a way of taking care of itself. I started Pageant Planet with $20. $20, and it does very well. So it's in the 7 figures of what it does. But that was over time. And because it was such a pain point, that forced me to learn more and more about business and leadership and marketing and different industries, which allowed me to start these other businesses and to grow this one. And then now there's offers on the table that people want me to be the CEO of their business because of the success of Pageant Planet, because what they see is an industry influential company, same way in our business in the medical aesthetics. So the thing that you're walking towards, it might not be easy, but it will develop you into something that'll make it worthwhile.
Oh my gosh. No, for sure. And thanks for sharing actual examples with your business, Roddy. And I'm loving what you're sharing. And I was going to ask you about the chasing money versus chasing purpose. And I'm curious because I see that a lot with people too. I'm like, oh, if you just shifted the way you were going about things and found your reason why and your purpose, and that the money will follow as you shared. What's 2 or 3 tips you could give somebody who has been chasing money and they're having this realization that it's not working, that they can then all of a sudden shift that and start to focus on the purpose with the trust that the money will follow? Do you have some guidance, whether it's mindset guidance, practical guidance, some things they could just start doing? Because that's a big shift for people who've been living their life from the other way.
Yeah. Well,
like what would you tell your buddy, for example?
Yeah, for my buddy, so it shows up. I don't think the thing that's easy, right, is when you're like, oh, chasing money. Yep, I know these people. They're doing that. I said I was chasing money with this conference. So this conference, I'm like, yeah, I overextended myself again. The conference, and then I did 3 real estate deals. And I'm like, I overextended myself because I got too excited about the money I was chasing. And then I overextended myself. And so what I would encourage first, anybody listening, is to challenge yourself to say, not if I'm chasing money, to say, where am I chasing money? Because then that'll shift your mindset so you can be more honest with yourself. So the first thing is look introspective, because if you can see, there's a book, it's called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. And basically it says this, that you, Kelley, find me, Steven, annoying because you're like, oh, he's so arrogant. Every time he comes around, is blah, 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 blah. So you say, okay, I'm working with Steven at this particular job. I hate working with Steven. He's my manager. He's so arrogant. Everything. So you quit that job and then you go to a different job. With daggone it, there is somebody else that comes and he's so arrogant. Oh my gosh. And so then you complain about her. And then your friends are arrogant and then all this stuff. You've got a blind spot and you don't know what that blind spot is, right? Because of the blind spot. So the only way God can reveal to you your blind spot is to mirror that deficiency in someone else. So you're saying Steven is so arrogant, John is so arrogant, whatever, when really you're the one that's dealing with arrogance. So if you're instantly like, oh, I know 12 people, they all love money. And like how I like, oh, a few of my friends love money. I was reminded of that when I was saying, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. So, and I was reminded when I said, during my period time, I was like, oh my gosh, I totally was chasing money in these instances. And then I got myself backed into a corner. So I was like, all right, so sorry, let me course correct. Now, how do you course correct? First, you have to deal with the situation at hand, which with the real estate, it's move some money around. With the conference, rather than saying, I need to get X amount of money or to pay for the conference, I'm like, what's the real benefit to these people of coming? Is there a benefit to them coming? And so I had to start from ground zero. And I just asked people, I need help. I'm missing something. What's it? Do you find this beneficial? Do you not? So it's shifting to more of a mindset of service. Because when you start a business, you're like, I got to get sales. And when you start a business, that's really the wrong approach. The best approach would be like, I need one customer, just one. And I need to find out how to service that customer so that they never leave. And then, yeah, of course you have to make sales to actually be in business. But then you get customer number two. What makes them tick? What are the similarities between these two customers? What is my competition not doing? And how do I service them so those two people never leave? If you were able to create a product or a service where people never leave because they're so satisfied with your service, your customer service, it doesn't matter if you grow at one customer every year, every 6 months, your business is always going to flourish and it'll outpace, because eventually you'll learn how to put more people in the funnel. But if you can get people to stop leaving you first, then you've solved that matrix. But for my buddy, what I would recommend to him is to listen to his wife. Because if your significant other has a constant complaint about, like, gosh, you're always working and I never see you. His perspective is, I've got to take care of these clients because I'm providing for the family. But the reality is that still you're working and chasing money because there's a fear that if he doesn't handle it, then the money's going to disappear, right? So you're still chasing money, but you can chase that money out of fear or out of a desired gain. So look at whatever area is causing you stress, and again, write it out. What areas am I chasing money? And then how would my life be different if I didn't do this? So I always think on paper. It really helps to clear the muddledness of just your thoughts.
Oh my gosh. So you know what's so hilarious is, like, I had a few questions written down and you answered all of them with what you just shared. And I love your answer so much. And one of my questions was going to be, what's a question that all the listeners themselves today can ask themselves? And you answered it, like, where am I chasing money? Right. Or if, like you said, there's that reflection piece happening, where are you showing that in your own personal or professional life? And I also wanted to ask, where do you and how do you weave your purpose in between your product, brand, and service? And you touched on that as well, right? Just finding that one person and providing them with the service. Do you have any, before we start wrapping up, do you have any last thoughts to that question? Just taking your purpose and applying it to your brand and business?
Yeah. So what I did, it's going on the company culture, right? Because company culture starts from the top and down. right? You as the owner determine your company's culture. And for me, I needed a set of guidelines because there's two rules of every employee, right? Don't make your boss mad, don't get fired. That's their two rules. And but the issue is what's going to make your boss mad, what's going to get you fired. And they didn't know the rules of the game. And so again, thinking on paper, I'm like, who are my favorite employees? Who are my least favorite employees? What made this employee not great in my eyes? What made this employee great in my eyes? And then I look for overlap, and that's called core values. So the overlap is core values. So for me, there's 5 core values. There's within the companies, and it's take ownership, work, you have no boss, communicate. So if I email you, there's a certain time frame that you need to communicate by. If you're going to miss a deadline, communicate it by that. Course correct. It's not if you're going to mess up, you're absolutely going to mess up. Just course correct. If you're not course correcting, you're going to notice an increase in my level of my frustration. So you have to course correct. You're not going to get in trouble for making a mistake, but you will get in trouble for making the same mistake. The other is keeping your commitments, doing what you said you're going to do when you said you're going to do it. And the last one is authenticity, right? I need you to, if you hate an element of your job, let me know, because I don't think anybody should work at something that they hate doing. Let me know so we can hire somebody else to do it, or offset that to somebody else, because what you hate, somebody else loves to do. So let's try to figure that out. Or if I didn't talk to you in a way that connected with you or made you upset, I want to know about it. I understand it's scary, but being authentic will help bridge that relationship. So you realize that all these things, right? It's coming out of me. My business isn't running me. I'm running my business. So where it started, to recap all this, is I started with questions of my desired outcome for the business. That helped me select the industry in the genre of business that I went into. As the business grew, I'm like, what am I actually good at doing inside of the business? Where is where's Steven's skill set? So I can hire other people to do the other things that I don't like doing that are my weaknesses. But then, so your purpose now is expanding from what do I want to do to now what am I doing? And then it's expanding to it has to encompass, it's like a little safety net around your company. And your core value is hey, this is the rule. You're going to come work for me. You're coming into my space. This is the rule so that I can have peace. And so that I can maintain my purpose. And that's the core values. And then the elevated version outside of that, which I'm working on now, I'm not sure how to back into it, but any vendors and exhibitors and customers should also be following your core values. Hey, this is what we believe. If you want to do business with us, you've got to follow these core, no-shows. You do a business, no-show. You keep your commitment, or you course correct, or you communicate if you can't be there. You're authentic if that meeting time or that agenda doesn't work for you, and you take ownership. If you made a mistake, it's not nobody else's fault, it's yours, right? So that's what I'm working on now. But that's how those all play together and kind of that beautiful this.
Yeah, it's perfect. I love your answer. And thanks so much for that guidance. It's awesome. So, Steven, I know we got to get going here. And so I just have 3 last quick questions, and then we'll just ask you to share where people can find you. These are just 1-sentence answer type things. So What would you say, you've had this journey in business and family and life, what would you say is your version of success today?
If my family could look at, after I'm dead and gone, my family can say, he lived his message. That would be success to me.
I love it. And what would you guide people to do to unleash their inner greatness? 3 things.
Read more books, specifically around mindset. Find or manage your finances. Select one day, every day. I do Friday, Financial Friday, and track all of your expenses in a spreadsheet so you don't overspend. If your money isn't right, regardless, and listen more than you talk. Be curious, ask questions versus give statements.
Love it. And what guidance would you give the listeners today when they hop off this episode? What's a call to action or just something they can do right away?
Think on paper. If you're overwhelmed, write it down. You don't do really good you don't brainstorm in your mind. Ideas pop in your mind, but I'm not saying that you cannot, but it's just inefficient to brainstorm in your mind. Think on paper, whether you're feeling depressed or you're analyzing a business, think on paper, Google Docs, something like that. Get out of your head.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Steven Roddy, aka The Connector, thank you for being here and showing up. I love your journey. You're so great at sharing stories and just sharing what you've learned. And I'm just excited. I'm most excited for you for the family that you've created for yourself. I just think that's just so awesome. You deserve it. I always enjoyed you and your energy and your contribution. And so where can the listeners find you? If they want to know more about your business and what you got going on, or they want to follow you, where can they do that?
I would just say Instagram. Just search Steven Roddy at Instagram. I don't always update. You'll see it on my bio. It says I live in the present and I post it random, but that has the different businesses that I'm connected with right there. And yeah, if you have questions, hit me up on Instagram and I'm happy to help where I can.
Oh my gosh. Awesome. Thanks so much. Hey, I really appreciate you being here today.
Thanks for having me, Kelley.
Awesome. Just want to hop on here and thank my buddy, Steven Roddy, for coming on and just sharing his stories and talking about purpose, right? And the power of chasing purpose versus chasing money. Money will follow. Not always an easy thing to do. In business, I think that's actually, when it comes to entrepreneurship, if you could really figure that piece out, that's really where the magic happens. And I believe it's a journey, right? We're all works in progress and we learn things through life and experience and putting ourselves out there. And so if you get anything from the episode today, I hope that what you get is that it's about following your purpose, following your passion, put yourself out there and design your life backwards, right? What do you want your life to look like? Steven talked about putting pen to paper. That's something I would encourage you to journal on. If you could design your life, what is a day in the life of you that would make you happy, would cause peace, you would be excited about it? What does that look like when it comes to all the aspects of your life? And then have that be your guiding light to figuring out where you put your time and your energy, which project you choose, which business, which partners, who you hang around, and follow it that way. You are in control. And the cool thing is, I know that I'm the source and I'm the one who designs my life. Yet in order for me to do that, I need to know what I'm designing. Right? So know what you're designing and get clear on that. And if you're not clear, just keep asking yourself the question and then write it down. Ask yourself the question, write it down, and just keep doing that until you paint a picture for yourself. And it'll make it easier for you to make decisions and lean into and live your purpose, and the money will follow. So thanks for that message, Steven Roddy. Appreciate you, The Connector, and everybody who's listening. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Don't forget to like, comment, leave a review, subscribe. With love, greatness, and success, it's your host, Kelley Beveridge.